Hello and welcome to the FATBOSS Guide to Mother on Mythic in Uldir.
So the premise of this encounter actually remains the same on Mythic. Your goal is to slowly move through the defense grids until the entire raid is in the final room where you can quickly finish her off. There is, however, some small changes that you should be aware of before you pull the boss. First to note is the different types of adds that spawn when people cross over. The DPS will spawn the adds that you've already seen from Heroic. You'll still want to continue to interrupt their Clinging Corruption cast. However, healers will spawn new viral contagions. Their endemic virus cast cannot be interrupted, so you're forced to stun them instead. If they, however, do cast successfully, it'll debuff a single player with a light dot. When the dot expires or is dispelled, it'll apply a much nastier dot to any players within 10 yards. So if the debuff is on you, make sure you get away from the rest of the raid team and then ask for a dispel. When tanks go through the defense grid, they'll spawn a resistant bacterium. These guys also have a cast that cannot be interrupted and instead must be stunned. The bacterial outbreak cast causes them to burst their primary target and buff all other adds damage by 10%. This isn't that important of a cast, ultimately you can just ignore it, and really you can probably kill these adds before the cast even goes off. Now, as all of these adds are just as important as they were in Heroic, it's important that you get a nice selection of people over early, so the adds can be dealt with swiftly every single time. There is plenty of ways to organise who goes over the defense grid and at what point they do so, and for the most part that's based on your raid composition, which obviously we don't know what yours is. We will, however, share what we found to work well for us. We send through a group of 5 first, that's 1 tank, 1 healer and 3 AoE DPS with stuns. Very shortly afterwards, we send a group of 4 players, which is 1 healer and 3 more AoE DPS with stuns, and then we stagger 3 groups of 3, and then the final group consists of a boss tank and a tank healer. We split up healing cooldowns for 2 exact points throughout the fight, the first crossing going into the second room, and the first crossing going into the final room. It's important to have at least a single raid damage reduction cooldown up, and an output CD for each point. Note that each point is roughly 2 minutes apart, so things like Tranquility, Paladin's Wings, Disc Ramps can be up for both times. Also note that we 5 heal this fight just for the extra cooldowns, but the fight definitely can be done with less. The idea is that as the first group crosses, the entire raid is topped up very quickly afterwards, allowing the second group to cross almost immediately after that, which then leaves you with 9 people in the new room, which is plenty to deal with all the adds, and you should be able to kill them before they do much. And you may be wondering, what about healing cooldowns from all the other times that people cross? Well, if only 3 players cross at a single time, you don't need to use any healing cooldowns whatsoever. And the same mentality really should also apply to your personal damage reductions. You don't need them for any other point in the fight apart from when all 5 people cross over for the very first time. In the very first room, just after you've pulled the boss, the first group goes through around 10 seconds into the fight, and once you're in the second room, all you need to simply do is wait until your 2-minute cooldowns are back up. That way it lines up perfectly and you have plenty of time to cross over whilst also maintaining damage on the boss.
Now the only other thing for you to note about this fight is the beams. You'll have a wall beam and immediately afterwards you'll have a ceiling beam. You just need to react fast and they're very easy to avoid. Just keep an eye on the boss slam and be ready to move from in front of her, as you can get overlaps where the tank is forced to face her towards the raid as you avoid the beams. You also want to try and remain stacked as much as possible because you could also get fire as you stack up for a ceiling beam, and if you spread across the safe spot you'll suffocate the space and you'll die to the fire. Either way, once you manage to get the entire raid into the last room, you just bloodlust and finish her off. There is no additional mechanics or damage to heal up aside from the tank, so healers should really actively DPS the boss here as well. One thing that we feel that we should mention before we finish the video is that you can actually kill the boss in the second room. Unfortunately, we don't have any footage of this, but it is becoming more frequent now for guilds and even random groups just to stay in the first room and cross over just before it sets on fire 2 minutes into the fight, as it's likely that you'll have the damage to kill her before the second room sets on fire. This requires the entire raid to move through the grid over the duration of about 5 seconds. If everybody uses a personal cooldown or an immunity and a health stone and pot whilst remaining within a spirit link and all of the other raid cooldowns literally just pop fucking everything, it's definitely possible for everyone to survive. We don't necessarily recommend this strategy unless you're really struggling or you just have absolutely insane gear and want to try out something different. But that's all it is for this encounter.
Thanks for watching, guys. If you'd like to know more details about this encounter, then check out our written guides over on Wowhead. You'll find detailed tooltips as well as additional information which we're sure you'll find useful. A link for that can be found in the description. And before we do go, a huge shout out to all of our supporters over on Patreon. We really do appreciate every single one of you. Take care, guys, and we'll see you all in the next one.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.